Hello everyone and welcome to another Halloween Caesar review. Today I am showing you and reviewing Pear-Shaped, published by Blue Orange Games. This is for 2 to 8 players, ages 7 and up, and takes about 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and show you what the game comes with, and I'll kind of talk about what I like about this game, maybe some things I didn't like, and hopefully you'll be able to see from that if this is a game for you. Spoiler alert on this one, this game is awesome. I'm a huge fan of this game before we dive into anything else. So let's go ahead and first, let's talk about the cards and the components here before we get into the actual gameplay. Number one, the game actually comes completely contained within this pair, within this box. And this is a game that I think they have, you can kind of see as you pull this out, it's not something really designed, in my opinion, to go in and out of this box very easily. I think it's really designed in such a way, at least for me personally, I'm just going to toss the box. So keep that in mind. But other than that, I'll keep that just for reference. This pair is absolutely amazing in every way and shape. No pun intended. It's really, really great. There's even like this really neat texture on it that makes it feel even like a pear. It is really, really good. And so they've just done an excellent job with this actual pear. I mean, it's just amazing. It looks like a pear. It feels like a pear. I'm just really blown away by the quality. You know, if I turn it on this side and you don't have that, like, it totally looks like a pear and it feels like a pear. It's crazy. It's so cool. Then they have these little wobbly eyes, which will make sense in a moment. This is just so cool. It's like such a novel idea and concept, but the game is really fun too. But I really wanted to spend some time focusing on this because this is really the meat and potatoes of one of the reasons why this game is so amazing. So number one, it does look amazing, and it has a very nice mechanism to just twist and lock, so can't pull it off now. Twist, pops right off. And the actual entire game will fit in here as well. So I'll show you that. And when we get to the gameplay, more importantly, this is actually a timer for the game as well. And initially we pulled it out and me and my kids were looking at it, and like without looking or reading the instructions at all, we're like, okay, well, how is this a timer? What does this do? Do you like twist it and then it like, you know, makes a noise or something? Or how do you know? What it does is it's actually weighted. This part of the pear is actually very heavy. Or I don't know, very heavy. It's substantial, it's weighted, whereas this is very light. So what happens is when the game is out, if you try to do this with the cards in it, and maybe I'll show you at the end, it's not going to work. It won't work. But what happens, and I'll talk about it again in the gameplay, but you have to do it on a hard surface. We tried this on the carpet originally. We're going to play on the floor. And I mean, we have, you know, like a Berber like carpet, so it's like pretty low. It's not like long or anything. So I thought maybe it would work. It doesn't really work. It slows down really quickly. But the idea is you have it on its side, you let go, and it's going to wobble. And it will wobble actually for quite some time. I haven't actually timed it yet. And it's going to vary, you know, depending on surfaces and everything like that. But it is meant to be played on a hard surface like this table here. We'll talk about more about that. But this pair, functionality, amazing. You'll notice the cards itself when we go to put these in the game itself will rest in here quite nicely. And boom, there it is. Now, this was one of my concerns here is the instructions were not folded like this. The instructions were folded just in this tri shape here and was in the box. And so that's one of my first kind of like, missed opportunity here in the game production of this is the rules are actually quite simple for this game. And I really wish there is a little bit of wiggle room here. I really wish they would have just included like two, I think they probably could have fit it on two double-sided cards even, 2 or 3 of them, a version of the rules. Like they could have included a rule set like this in the box, which is great. But I still kind of wish they would have included just a nice, easy, quick reference card or 2 in here with the main elements of the game. I think that's really missed opportunity because everything would fit in here really nicely. I want to get rid of the box. And so the one thing I decided is, well, can I fit this in here? So I folded it and then I folded it again. And it's really, really tight. And I don't know if I'm going to actually keep it in there, but I folded it so that I could slip it in there and close it. So it's going to be, it's tight. It is tight, and it's going to put some pressure on the cards in kind of an awkward way. So I haven't decided. I've been storing it like this with the instructions. It does make it fits in there well, but as you're going along, it is brushing the corners of the instructions because it's not made to go in there. But it does fit in there. And so I don't know. So then I was going through some of that frustration, have it in there. And honestly, I think I might still keep it in there. It doesn't seem to be putting too much pressure on the cards to do any damage. But that being said, then my kids noticed and they were like, "Oh, Dad, there's a QR code. There's a code down there that you could scan." And so I think that's maybe one of the reasons why they decided, well, we're not going to include a card because if you scan this, and most of us, not all of us, but most of us have smartphones these days, you can scan this QR code and it actually pulls up a website that's a virtual or digital edition, a version of the rules. So while it doesn't have the rule card that I was hoping for and wishing for and still wish would exist, I may honestly just try to make my own little rule summary, print it out, laminate it, and slide it in there because it would definitely fit. So you could do that too. But regardless, if you're like, hey, I always have my smartphone, like if I ever need to reference it, very, very simple. You can pull up the whole rule book just with that QR code. And the reason why I said that is because it is a party game. And so there is just some changes in players' setup. So the game itself, very, very simple. I don't even think you'd necessarily need these as you get the game, it's good. The rules itself, explaining the game, do a great job. I have no issue with the rules. I think the rules are great. They have good graphics and pictures. Their bullet points are pairs. It's great. The only thing here is really the player count here. So there's a bunch of cards in here. I can't recall offhand if it says how many total. I think it's over here, 72. So there's 72 cards within the deck itself. However, depending on the number of players, you're going to play with a different number of cards. So you're going to deal out, in a 2-player game, for example, 18 cards. You can have 6 in your hand at a time. And meaning you'll have 12 in your draw pile. 3 to 4 players, you have 15 and 5, 5 and 6, 12 and 4. So that's where I was like, man, it would be really nice just to have an easy reference, because that is one of the things that you just have to check in setting that up. But the rule set themselves is great. Lastly, the card quality. So obviously these are shaped in the shape of a pear, which is a new card shape that I've never had before, and it was kind of fun. So it's interesting because dealing with it, first of all, the card quality and component quality on these are fantastic. They're great. So you can tell it's got this nice kind of like linen finish. Like they're very good quality cards. They're not, I would call them great quality. They're not flimsy. They're really good quality cards. The graphics on them are really great. So all the backs are the same with this green, with the name of the game, pear-shaped. They're all the same size, but you can look at the graphics here. They're all pear-shaped items. You have avocados, pears, bowling pins. You have what we call potions, the light bulbs. We have raindrops. And then there's different colors. Green, and we have blue, and kind of this purple. One of the things that, I like the images on the cards. I think it works really, really well. It makes it a little bit more challenging because you're going to want to try to match the numbers. And so sometimes your mind will have a little bit of a hard time recognizing. You're like, okay, are these no, this is 5, this is 6. Okay, they're different. And you're trying to do this quickly. This is a quick game. My only concern here with the colors is with the yellow and the orange. The yellow and the orange, I'm not colorblind or anything, and you can definitely tell a difference between them when they're side to side. The problem is like when you're going through the decks and stuff, and the lighting, depending on the lighting and everything, again, they're different, but they're similar. I really wish that they weren't so similar. And maybe this plays to the game's some advantage to the game. Some people may look at this as a slight advantage to the game because it makes it a little bit more challenging, perhaps, with trying to determine that. I just personally think that those colors should have been maybe a little bit different, but I guess it could play to the game's, because what you're trying to do is match, and we'll talk about that. But the card quality is actually really good. Now, when you're playing the game, because they're not, you can't have you're going to have a deck of cards. You're going to kind of move them around. They get played all sorts of different directions. You're going to kind of have a pile here. It might be a little bit awkward, but I actually found that it actually is pretty easy to just go ahead and you kind of get them all up and, vertical or one way, that way. And then all you have to do is pull them that way and then go like that. So I know there's some other like oddly shaped cards, and I feel like it's harder to kind of orient them and get them back. But these pear-shaped ones actually work really, really well. It's not that big of a deal. You just kind of gather it up, and then you take the two piles, put them back together. Pretty slick. Let's talk about the actual gameplay of this. So again, 2 to 8 players, great party game. And it's just quick. The gameplay mechanics, you think about like classics, Mensa Selected Set. If you're familiar with that game, excellent game. I honestly don't know. I believe it's still in print. I don't know who's printing it these days, but I grew up as a kid playing that all the time. And it's where you're trying to match different things. You're trying to collect sets, but you're trying to identify things that are the same or different in all the different patterns. Great, great game. Reminded me a little bit of that, as well as Blink, which is another quick, that's just a 2-player game where you're trying to get rid of your deck as fast as you can. This has very similar mechanics to that, but it adds some elements with this timing element with the pair. And I it just works really, really well. So the general gist of the game again is you have some cards in your hand, and you may have, depending on player count, a certain number in your hand at once. And then you have a draw deck as well. The goal of the game is to get rid of your cards before anyone else. And as soon as you're able to get rid of all of your cards, you're going to go ahead and grab the pair. And if you do that, you are the winner. But setup, very easy. You go to this, again, in here, figure out how many cards to deal. You're going to go ahead and shuffle those. I think I don't know if you actually share something or, yeah, you just grab the pair, you win the game. And then you do the Shakespeare. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Gotta love puns. But the idea is whoever's going to be starting this is going to go ahead and start the pair. Now, the pair's timer is its wobble. So you're going to go ahead and put it on its side, and when you let go, it's going to wobble around. And as long as that's going, the person's going to then flip over one of their cards from their draw pile, and then everyone goes at once. So it's a frantic, try to play as many cards as you can. Now, what you're trying to do is match the color, the symbol, or the number, and as long as you can do that, you can lay a card. And when you do, you're going to also shout out what you're matching. In this case, this is pink. Okay, this is what I'm matching. I'm matching the pink. I could also match the number. There's 6 here, 6 there. I can put that down, 6. Keep going. You can always draw up, and you may have a limit, depending on the number of player in your hand. But look here, this is one of the restrictions on the matching. When we do that, this is 6, but because this was laid down as a 6, no one can lay down the same exact match. So I can't lay down, not the same thing that was matched. And now when this happens, I'm going to pause. When the timer runs out, everyone's going to stand up. As soon as they notice it, they're going to stand up, point at the pair, and start wobbling, doing the Shakespeare dance here. Wobble back and forth, and whoever is the last person or person who doesn't point to the pair that stopped, what's going to happen is that person is going to get all of the cards that were put in the pile. Again, the goal of the game is to get rid of all your cards in your hand and your draw pile. So that's part of it. So you're watching this, waiting for that, but if you spend too much time watching the pair, you're not getting rid of your cards, which is the goal. So there's kind of that element to it. What I was explaining here is that you can't lay down. So if someone laid this down just barely and said 6, you cannot say or lay down a match utilizing that same thing that was just matched, if that makes sense. So the number 6, the quantity, I can now match raindrop, the item on the card, or the color of the card, but I can no longer match the number on the card. Now, that being said, if there was an exact match, then I would be able to play that, and that's something different. But the gameplay would continue on there. I could go green. Bowling pin. Now, I can say bowling pin again because that one was just played. I could look at my other cards and I could go 4, play that. Constantly, you could be refilling your hand to the appropriate draw size, blue, and so on. If you can't do anything, you're going to kind of have to wait there a little bit. You might have to keep an eye on the Shakespeare there. Doing the dance. Once it stops, again, you're going to stand up, and wobble back and forth. Last person to do that gets the cards. The other thing that's going to happen, I mentioned it, is what if you have an exact match? And I should have done this beforehand, but did not. Do we have that one? Yeah. So if we have an exact match, we have, say, a stack of cards here, and someone says, oh, 1. And I have this one here. What's going to happen is not only am I going to be able to play this, but instead it's an exact match. So I'm not going to say green or pair or 1. However, in this case, what would happen is this is wobbling back and forth, and I actually get to play this, and I shout pear-shaped, and I grab the pear. Now, it's very important that this will actually be placed in the general area available to everyone, not just the person who started the timer, because it's a very important element to the pear-shaped thing. So as soon as the exact match is played, the person's going to shout pear-shaped, or whoever notices that. I mean, if you have a person who plays it and they're like, oh, green, you can actually shout pear-shaped and go ahead and grab the pear. The first person to grab the pear is actually not going to get any cards. So they shout pear-shaped, they grab the pear. What happens in this case is you take the stack of cards, and if you're playing like with 3 players, you're going to divvy out the stack to the 3 players like that. And so then that gets distributed to all the other players except for the individual who was able to grab the pear. You may have that situation again where the person who played the card and said pear-shaped or whatever actually didn't grab the pear. They weren't quick enough to grab it. And so there's that added element that's really fun. So you have the timer element, which is really unique and funny. And then you have this idea that, you know, when it stops, as it slows down, and if someone stops and points at the pear and it's actually still going, it's still wobbling around, but they've stopped and pointed at it. They're trying to not be last and they went before it actually stopped. They would have to take the pile in the middle. But I really, really like just that the idea that it's a timer, and then that idea that you kind of have to watch that. But the pear-shaped, you want to be the first to grab the pear, or else you're going to be getting cards distributed to you. But that's really it. That's pear-shaped. I think it works really, really well. It's fun even as a 2-player game, but you can play up to 8 players. I haven't played up to that player count, but you know, having this with 8 players, I think would be crazy, but it would be crazy fun. And I think it's a really, really great game. I really, really enjoyed it. So I think this is definitely a fun one to play in groups. It's a great family game. The only thing to consider, again, it is a quick game. So it's a speed game. And if you have, I think honestly, that's the biggest thing with the age. You know, if a 6-year-old was playing with a 6-year-old, I think you'd be okay. Or a 5-year-old with a 5-year-old. I think it's interesting, a balance, right, of being able to quickly notice these things and move quickly, and kind of understanding some strategy of like, okay, I'm going to play this, and then it's this frantic moments, but it's really a very simple game. As you can see here, the timer is not going to work when it has the cards inside it, because now it's not bottom heavy anymore, because it's got it is, but it's got those cards in it that's going to pull it down. So that is Pear-Shaped Blue Orange Games. I really, really enjoyed this. My kids really enjoyed this as well. I think it's fantastic. The quality of all the components and everything is really great, and it's just a fun time. So if you're looking for a quick game, I think this is really the only reason why someone wouldn't maybe enjoy it as much, is that quick element, that fast-paced element to it. But I really enjoy it. The kids really enjoyed this one. Highly recommend it. That is how Lou sees it.